Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of our podcast called Random Cricket Photos That Make My Guests Happy. And before we introduce you to our guest for the day, here is a random cricket photo that makes me happy.
The pitch today looks very good. It's a nice dry wicket. Magnificent shot, Greg Chappell. Beautiful placement. Jeez. What about that? Listen to the crowd now. They're into him.
He's not happy. He's not at all happy.
You would not believe that was possible.
Should be caught. Could be caught. It's Harare.
This is a picture that doesn't have any cricketing action happening. In fact, it shows a few cameramen recording something from outside the window of the commentary box from the 1980 centenary test, almost putting their lives in danger as it appears. Now, what these men were recording was actually something so important that the cricketing action was paused for a while. Inside that commentary box, one of cricket's most favourite voices, John Arlott, was commentating for the final time ever in a test match. As he finished his stint with the mic, a public address announcement announced that Arlott had completed his final commentary session, and such was the effect of that announcement that the crowd rose up on their feet and gave Arlott an ovation. In fact, the entire Australian team in the field and the two England batsmen also joined the crowd. Geoffrey Boycott even removed his batting gloves to applaud. This photo by Patrick Eagar for me not only represents the fame that John Arlott gained as a commentator, but also the adulation that the voices of the game have received, and deservingly so, over the years for their yeoman service to the game. The game, as beautiful as it is, owes a lot to these wordsmiths for making so many moments extra memorable with their words. One such wordsmith joins us today on the podcast. Who is that? Well, let's find that out together. It is 2015. I'm still in my college with a head full of hair and sitting in one of those cricket quizzes of Delhi University waiting for the quizmaster to arrive. And it was a big quiz solely because of the quizmaster who was a famous cricket commentator. Now, we had heard him from the commentary box. We had heard about him, of course. But then the quiz starts, and apart from it being one fantastic quiz, the quizmaster, a supposedly serious commentator, blows all of us away with his sheer coolness. 5 years later, the same cool man who goes by the name Gautam Bhimani is joining us on our podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Gautam. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much, Amit. That's a great introduction. In fact, before you even go any further, I should turn that on its head by saying that if you remember and your memories of me as a quizmaster, my first is exactly the same, of being completely blown away by this gentleman with a little less hair being the quizmaster when I was in a quiz, and being completely stumped by that and swearing that if I ever attend another cricket quiz again, it'll only be if Amit Sinha is on my team.
Well, that has to be made possible. So we are going to make that possible in times to come, I hope.
Glad to hear that.
So how has this period been for you? No cricket happening. So, deficiency of vitamin cricket causing some troubles to your system?
It totally does. It's, I think, the same for everyone. Fortunately, thanks to a little recent innovation by the guys in the Caribbean and CPL, we've had some retro matches which they've fully replayed ball by ball, and the current commentators have actually done live commentary on it without actually knowing what's going to happen in the game. So that's kind of given us a little injection, a little fix of that vitamin C.
We need it badly. It's been way too long without cricket, and there is only so much highlights that one can watch on television and YouTube. Anyway, moving on. So 5 years ago, you were the one asking questions. You were the one throwing googlies. Today, I'll take that opportunity to turn the table and ask you a few questions. No googlies, just gentle medium pace of Dada. So, Gautam, being the son of Kishore Bhimani, just tell us how much was your childhood made up of cricket, and did it ever get too much for you at some point? I mean, you practically grew up surrounded by cricket and cricketers, if I'm not wrong, right?
Absolutely. The answer is it didn't become too much, for the simple reason that it was a great era in the 70s when there wasn't as much cricket as we have now. Yes, you may have mentioned vitamin C and that, we are missing cricket now. But yes, we have to admit that there is a bit of an overdose of it, even for all of us cricket lovers. We have to pick and choose what we like, what we follow, what we watch, what we work on. But in those days, it was, you looked forward to every bit. Cricket was seasonal. It was summer in England, you would look forward to that. Winter in India or Australia, everyone had its own season. And at that point in time, it was never too much. But yes, every bit of my life at least was governed by that. Whether it's a holiday, it would be, okay, we're going to so-and-so place, but we'll try and get in a test match, be it Sydney, be it London. If it was at home and we'll have people over, there'd usually be someone from the cricketing fraternity who'd be coming. You'd grow up with them. And those days, it was not, huge amounts of security. So having Imran Khan bring the entire team over home for dinner was not seen as such a huge deal for them or for anyone. There'd be maybe one security guy who'd come, but that would only because he'd want to enjoy the biryani as much as the players, not because he had to keep so much of an eye on them. So yes, growing up to see all these guys was amazing. But for me, it was, just the ability to be able to sit through a test match. And my dad injected that love of the game into me. Not that he said, okay, listen, this is what I'm going to pass on to you as a profession. It's just that I was around it so much, and sitting through 5 days of a test match in 76 at the Eden Gardens and 78 against Kalicharan's team, that's what got me into the game. Otherwise, as an 8-year-old, you don't really intend to, you can't even imagine a modern person doing that over 5 days of a test match.
Watching 5 days of cricket from the ground, I think, no, I really can't imagine people from, the next generation to be even think of it. Now that we are fed on T20 cricket and one-day cricket, that doesn't sound really plausible, but I'm glad it happened to you. But as you talked about, your father, you taking ahead your father's profession. So was it a conscious decision, or was it something that you just had the right conditions around you to get into and you just followed into the footsteps of your father?
Absolutely. The simple answer to that is no. There was no intention of mine to get into it. Yes, if someone had told me that, would you like to do it one day? I would have said, yeah, if it kind of works out, yes. But it didn't seem as if it was going to work out, because while I loved the game and I had enough times I sat in a commentary box, and one of my great memories is in fading light in Cuttack in a one-day international between India and England, where I was actually given the responsibility of being the unofficial scorer/statistician, because it was pitch dark. I had a torch with me, and it was those days when the rule was that whoever was ahead at that stage wins the game. Okay. So at the other end of the ground, Mrs. Fowler, Graham Fowler's wife, was the person doing it for the England team. And at this end, in the commentary box, I was doing it. India had batted first. Ravi Shastri had got 100. Srikanth was LBW for 99. And when England were chasing, they were just behind at where India were at that stage. And so I kept feeding this information to the commentators. The other end of the ground, I saw a little torch flash from Mrs. Fowler. That was a signal to the England team that, listen, they're ahead by 1 run. And they suddenly appealed against the light, which anyway was pitch dark, but they decided only to appeal then. And they won the match on pre-Duckworth-Lewis rule. Wow. So which year was this? How old were you? So I was, I'm trying to remember, this would have been around 1984, I would imagine, Shastri and Srikanth opening, and the likes of Paul Downton and Fowler and Richard Ellison playing for England. Yeah, so I think it was that series. Tour of 84. So I was 14 then, but purely interested with that official duty. So I enjoyed what little bits of time I got in the comm box. I used to write a lot on cricket and other subjects. When I came back from college, my dad sent me to Sharjah just as a trial. He said, listen, I'm not going for this trip. Go and enjoy yourself. Cover it as a print journalist. Australasia Cup 94. So full trip without him looking over my shoulder. I covered as an independent print journalist for a Bengali daily, Pratidin. I wrote in English. They translated it. And that was my first initiation into working on cricket. But again, it was not a conscious effort. I finished that. I joined an ad agency, and that's where I was for 7 years. And it was just a chance of fate that quizzing being my passion, not just sports quizzing, but I used to take part in brand equity every year. Tough as anything. And that particular year, we were in the national finals representing HTA, my ad agency. And the winning prize was a CLO car which we missed out on thanks to Derek being a little bit strict on us with one particular question in the final round in Bombay.
We quizzes never forget these things, do we?
Oh no. I mean, I remember the question also. There was a picture of Vishwanathan Anand and Anatoly Karpov playing a chess match. And Derek said, give us the location of this chess match. And I put on the buzzer and I said, Manhattan, New York. And he said, -5. I said, Derek, that is Manhattan, New York. He said, it's a business quiz. You have to specify that it's the World Trade Center. That's the reason why I've put this question in a business quiz.
Oh,
I said, really? You're going to cut off points to that? Sorry. I mean, we were friends, still are, but he had to play by the rule book, and hence we got docked points. And instead of first, we came third, All India. So what was the prize for third place? No Cielo car, which, by the way, turned out to be quite a white elephant for those who bought it.
Absolutely.
It was a trip to Singapore, a week in Singapore, which I went and I enjoyed, having spent lots of time in Singapore. I said, I've done enough of Orchard Road shopping, Jurong Bird Park. I decided as a tourist to go and view or see what the ESPN Star Studios are all about. And once I got there, fate would have it. There was a program going on with Harsha and Jeffrey Boycott. I was told, look, Jeffrey's a nasty old man. He doesn't speak to strangers. I didn't listen to that. 2 o'clock in the morning in the cafeteria, I spoke to him for 1 hour, regaled him with my love for the game, his 100th 100 at Headingley, the shot he played to get to that 100. And he thought I was some kind of a nutcase. I mean, he said, how do you know all this stuff? And my future boss, which I didn't know, was overhearing this entire conversation. He ticked me off for not following his instructions and then said, come see me Monday morning. We're hiring. And that was it. I was taken on board at ESPN Star as a backroom researcher for a program called Harsha Online. Still not knowing what I was going to get into. But that was my entry into television. And 6 months later, one of the stories that I'll regale with the photograph, that switched into appearances on camera. So totally by accident.
So that began the journey, and well, it has gone on. And it has taken you to a lot of places, of course. So, you've commentated from every part of the world pretty much. So which part of the world do you enjoy visiting the most as a commentator?
Well, I've often been asked about, favorite grounds, prettiest places, etc. And obviously there are many, purely in terms of a breathtaking sight, there's nothing like Newlands, Cape Town.
Okay.
Adelaide Oval has a special place. It's gorgeous. But overall, in terms of ambience, love for the game, knowledge of the game, and pure enjoyment of sport on and off the field, it has to be the Caribbean. Nothing comes close to it. I'm there every year now for 2 months for the CPL, and it is just the way they love their game. Yes, it's the biggest party in sport, as they call it, but it's not just inane partying. Everyone who comes there, even if they're 9 beverages down, they know their game inside out and they love their game. So that is what endears me to that part of the world. And of course, if you throw in a beach and blue waters, it kind of looks nice as well.
Nice is an understatement. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so, I'll give you +10 for those answers. I'm a generous quiz master. So, Gautam Bhimani, ladies and gentlemen, has begun very well. But now comes round 2, which is the roundabout cricket photographs, memories, nostalgia, and whatnot. So, Gautam, without, wasting much time, I know this must have been tough for you to pick 5 photographs, but we've got to do what we've got to do. So, let's begin on that journey. I'll let you take over, which is the 5th photograph on that list of photographs that make Gautam Bhimani happy from the game of cricket. Which photo would you like to talk about?
All right. So again, they're in different years. So in no particular order, I'm going to start with a photograph that goes back to October 1999. But strangely, the photograph is from 1999. But when I came across it, it was June 2001 at the Harare Sports Club. It was my first ever tour, having just spoken about how I got into cricket accidentally. I'd spent my first 6 months at the channel as just a backroom researcher. And suddenly I was told, you're going to Zimbabwe. To do what? Nobody knows. I was asked basically, okay, you go morning and evening, you do an interview with the Indian captain, the Zimbabwe captain, the 2 coaches, and that's it. Like, that's lovely. It's great to be in there, but that's pretty boring. What do I do for the rest of the day? So I finished my interviews in the morning, Harare Sports Club, beautiful. And I'm wandering around the field and I see there's a pub on the ground called the Keg and Maiden.
Okay.
And I walk in there and the atmosphere is just unbelievable. I mean, it's almost a miniature version of the kind of atmosphere I mentioned from on the beaches of the Caribbean. And everyone's there having a party. It's fantastic. And there's, the greats of the game, Sachin Tendulkar batting out there in the middle. And there are bar stools literally going up to the boundary line. And I said, this is a test match. And it's being watched with this sort of ambience and something I hadn't seen despite having traveled to even Australia and England by then to watch cricket. And I was quite zapped. And we were sitting on the backdrop of this photograph of 9 slips. And I always associate my time and my first cricketing story ever with that photograph because that's what got a conversation going with so many other cricketing fans over there. What was this about? What were the 9 slips? There was it was a one-day international between Zimbabwe and Australia, and Steve Waugh had asked, Damien Fleming was bowling that day, and even at his pace, he had figures of 10 overs, 4 maidens, 3 for 13, and terrorized the Zimbabweans. And just to make a point of it, Steve Waugh placed 9 fielders in the slips. Dennis Lilly had done it once in 76, but on this occasion, Damien Fleming decided to do a Lilly and got 9 slips. And that led to me saying that, listen, there are stories in here. There is a 9 slips, but there is Sachin out there batting. And there are people here at this wonderful pub called the Keg and Maiden. This deserves a story. I ran back to my producer and I said, listen, given that I have nothing much to do all day, don't you think we should put this in as a story? And he said, what do you mean a story? We're here to cover cricket. I said, I know, but people might want to know about what's happening, on the sidelines.
Beyond cricket.
He said, we've not thought about this, but I don't think it's a good idea. I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and shoot the story and we'll see. So I went and did a full shoot, like a 3-minute version, showing the 9 slips, showing other lovely memorabilia in the pub, interviewing people. And I ended with a large jug of amber liquid, shall we say. In those days, nobody worried about showing this stuff on television. And he said, okay, we'll put it on air at lunchtime. We've got 40 minutes at lunch. How much will you analyze? So in the 40-minute show, we'll put in a 3-minute story. So next day, the story was put in. Navjot Sidhu, Harsha and Sunny Gavaskar were in the studio. Sherry Bhai fell off his chair, saying that how can a guy who's so small even hold a jug of beer that big? But apart from Navjot Sidhu, generally the story got well received. And the next thing I'm told is, can we have something for day 3 and day 4 and day 5 and the next test and the next 15 years basically? And that's where, the second side of what I do in cricket, apart from commentary and hosting, came about, which was the colour story. And it was born on that day in the backdrop of the 9 slips. And my life was certainly not the same for the next decade and 2 decades, actually.
Another serendipitous beginning to something that you've done for so many years. And, talking about this photograph, it looks photoshopped, right? But this is pure Australia being Australia. This is 1999. They have just won the World Cup at the peak of their dominance, pretty much bullying the opposition. I mean, the tactic is not really going to get a wicket. This was a tail ender, okay? And, it was just about flexing some muscles and mentally disintegrate the opposition, as Steve Waugh would have called it. But fascinating.
That's what they've always done. And it's about sending that message across. And in Zimbabwe, even though they were babes in the woods, they didn't have the worst team in the world. That was probably that year around that 99 World Cup was their best ever team with the likes of Neil Johnson, Heath Streak and Alistair Campbell and the best team they really ever had.
Yes, this team had pretty much everyone. Murray Goodwin, Andy Flower, Grant Flower. And yet they were steamrolled by 9 wickets, 132 all out. And Australia overhauled the target in no time. So yeah, this photo actually for me it demonstrates the sheer mental disintegration of that Steve Waugh so proudly talked about during his time as the captain. So what have we got next on the list then?
So I'm going to again try and stick to that era before we come back. So I don't think necessarily we do it as number 1 being the most poignant, but I think I'm just going to put them all on the same pedestal, if that's okay.
Absolutely fine.
So I'm going to go to 1983. And of course, if you say 1983, for everyone, whether or not you're a Bollywood fan or a cricket fan, only one incident comes to mind. But for me, for whatever reason, maybe it's just in literally in the DNA, it has a very special part. So that summer of 83, I was in part of a 1 month long holiday in the US and in the UK. And obviously being in the UK, Wimbledon and cricket was on the cards because the World Cup was on. So part one of the story is 18th of June, or a couple of days before that, my dad tells me, here's a ticket to go and watch India at Tunbridge Wells playing against Zimbabwe. And we've got some friends who are driving us up. We're going to have a lovely picnic. It's a beautiful part of Kent. And I'm like, hang on a sec. I had already, by that time, I had been to the Sydney Cricket Ground and I had seen cricket in Eden Gardens. And I had been promised that Lord's was next on the lineup for me. And I said, we've come all the way to England and you're taking me to, what is it? Tunbridge Wells to watch a match. I don't care if India are playing. They're playing Zimbabwe, who are not even a team. I mean, forget 99. In 83, they were absolutely no team. I mean, don't tell Duncan Fletcher this, but yeah, they weren't a team. But he really, I said, why would I want to go and see that? The World Cup is on and you promised me Lord's. So my dad says, okay, fine. Since I promised you Lord's, he made a couple of phone calls. Same day, 18th of June, Australia were playing West Indies at Lord's. And he says, good news, we've got tickets to go to Lord's. So that's it. Our friends drove up to Tunbridge Wells and we decided to come to Lord's to watch Gordon Greenidge make 90, Vivian Richards 95. Great day out. I had my first trip to Lord's. But guess what? In my year, I was seeing history evolve a few miles away. Where I should have been, I could have been, but I had chosen not to, just for the love of seeing Lord's for the first time. And I listened to the full match on radio. Didn't feel that bad because nobody had saw it on TV anyway. But I could have been there at the ground and I wasn't.
Exactly. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much, do you sort of regret that decision looking back? I mean, you could have been a part of a very select group of people who could have taken those bragging rights of, see, I was there when with something that nobody has seen. I have seen that. So yeah, what do you feel about that?
I had the tickets, I had the transportation, I had everything. It's just that when you don't know what's about to happen, and thanks to the fact that the opposition was Zimbabwe, the venue was nondescript till then. Had India been playing Australia or England at Birmingham, Manchester, Lord's, Oval, I would probably have gone 99%. But it's just that I had this desire as a cricket fan to see Lord's. But you would imagine, if you're listening in, that, well, maybe a few days later you were at Lord's. Unfortunately, again, I wasn't. Because while Zimbabwe weren't a team, India too were just basically a representative team that time in the context of one-day cricket. Most cricket, really. When the West Indies were around, the mighty West Indies, India had beaten them in Burbice in one match on the tour before that. Yes, they may have won a group game. But when it came to the crunch, two-time world champions, they were going to reach the final. They were going to win 3 World Cups in a row. 21st of June, India were playing Australia at Chelmsford. I did drive up there. We were there for an hour and a half at Chelmsford to watch that game. And then from there, we went to Wimbledon to watch Jimmy Connors play Eddie Edwards in the opening round, centre court, front row seats. That was another treat for me. And then I had to take the late night flight back to India because school was starting and I had to come back to India.
So you missed the final as well?
Yes, but there is just a bright spark to the story because when I came back to India... Yes, I didn't fly back. But the fact that India managed to win that semi-final and reach the final, it brightened up my birthday party, which happens to be 25th of June.
What a day to have your birthday.
Exactly. So we had the birthday party. The first half didn't go too well. We had about 20, 30 people there and cake was cut and everything. But it was like, okay, fine. At least India were in a World Cup final on my birthday. And there's not enough runs on the board, but who cares? Doesn't matter. Few loyalists stayed on till as late as it got India time. And then, of course, we cut a second cake because India went on to win the World Cup and they won it on my birthday. So for me, 25th June 1983 remains special, even though I couldn't go to Tunbridge Wells. I couldn't be at Lord's on that particular day, but I had been there. I was to be there many times later. So all's well that ends well.
And the photo that you pick for this day, you could have been one among those people running onto the Lord's pitch after the win. This photo clicked by Adrian Murrell, but you were cutting cakes. But it's not a bad day to have your birthday.
I had the pleasure of meeting Adrian Murrell when I was in England. And that's why when I was trying to select a photograph, I said, yes, there are some lovely pictures of Kapil playing at Tunbridge Wells. There is the iconic trophy shot, be it with Mohinder Ramanath or without. But I said what really symbolizes it for me that particular day is all those people running on. Yes, it was a different era then. There was not security. You were allowed to actually go onto the field. But the fact that so many Indians ran onto the field that day was the first signal of how things were going to change. 4 years later, India would host the World Cup. The whole, financial sector in world cricket would start shifting towards India, and it all happened on that day. And I think this photograph sort of encapsulates that.
Yeah, it sounds cliched to say that cricket changed because of that particular day, but can't put it any other way because it really did. It's wonderful. And what comes next now?
So again, since we were at Lord's, let's stay at Lord's. In a time of lockdown, let's not take too many flights at the moment. So fast forward to 2002 and the NatWest final, which again was, special for many reasons. If you were talking about various images or various moments, Indian cricket took a leap forward. One would have been 83. Another was that NatWest final, because in those days, one-day cricket was at a stage when if you scored 300 plus, you pretty much batted the opposition out. 325 in a final in the context of modern cricket was more like 380. And, the first image that I remember of that day was Nasser Hussain getting to 100 and pointing to his shirt for the obvious, there was a whole banter on where he should bat. And so he wanted to make a point. So we got introduced to Nasser. But then came, of course, the iconic run chase, started by Saurav and Sehwag, and then went on to the fabulous Yuvraj and Kaif partnership. But noticeably, you're expecting me to pick the photograph of the shirt off. And I haven't chosen that photograph for two reasons. One, I want to protect my classmate. And that's always a great thing to know that you were in the same school growing up with Saurav Ganguly in Xavier's in Calcutta. Never played cricket together, but we played football together in St. Xavier's as kids. But he'll be the first one to admit that if there's one thing he'll never do again, that would be take off his shirt. He'd win those matches 20 times over. He'd celebrate, but that was an impulse that I don't think he'd ever do again. So we won't show the picture again. Every time I've interviewed him and I brought that up, he's like, almost kicked me under the table. So I won't bring up that picture. Instead, a photograph that really does it for me is how he nearly cleaned up Mohammad Kaif. The England bowlers couldn't do it throughout the run chase, but Saurav managed to come flying in from the pavilion once he had put his shirt on and jumped on Mohammad Kaif because he knew just what he had done. Yuvraj had played a great part as that partnership. Saurav and Sehwag laid the foundation, but Kaif just sort of held his nerve and took them through at the end, and hence he was obviously hailed as one of the big heroes, and it was just a great occasion to be a part of. My wife was in the stands. My son was kind of in the stands because she was 7 months pregnant, so he also remembers, or I tell him that, you were there as well at the NatWest final.
Nice way to be a part of a historic moment. And I'll put this question to you. Would this moment or would this match be as fondly remembered as we do now if we take out the Saurav Ganguly celebrations from it? What do you think?
You're right. I mean, I know I haven't used that as my representative, but probably not. That gesture, like in a sense the 9 slips we talked about with Steve Waugh, and because it was a response to Andrew Flintoff and what he had done, was also in a way signifying that, listen guys, we are here and don't mess with us. And it was Saurav's way of, he was the one who injected that aggression without crossing the line into Indian cricket, into that Indian dressing room. And, no matter which side of the fence you sit on, I'm not saying it because we were in school together or class together, but because many neutrals would agree that it was that seeing you eye to eye that sort of started around the year 2000 when he took over the captaincy. And that was, it manifested itself on that day at Lord's. So I agree with you that image really is the one image that shows that day.
Great. So, penultimate photograph, which one would you talk about?
So now we are going again. This time I'll go chronologically and I'll go to still 2002 and my favorite part of the world, the West Indies. Obviously, we couldn't complete 5 photographs without bringing in my favorite West Indies at some point in time. And it's the prettiest part of the Windies, somewhere I haven't been for a while because the CPL doesn't have a franchise in Antigua. But my first trip to Antigua was in 2002. Boring as a test match it had a few things that it's remembered for. One of them personally was the fact that I went up in a helicopter and did commentary with Sir Viv Richards. And that was an iconic moment in my entire commentary career. He was in the commentary box. None of the other commentators wanted to actually get up on that chopper with no doors on it. And I said, what better way to see the island? And up I went. And for an entire session, I was up there doing commentary with headsets on, RF microphone and RF camera, radio frequency for the uninitiated. And it was a great way to watch from above. And it happened at the time when Ajay Ratra got to his 100. And of course, there was the instance of all 11 Indian players actually coming on to bowl. But that sort of sums up what kind of a test match it was. But what was even more significant from that point, test match point of view, was Anil Kumble. We talk about images that stay for a lifetime. I think to show the kind of fighting team India were and what they were made of, that spirit was symbolized by Anil Kumble. Getting injured, yes, knowing that he was going to fly home the next day, but coming on to bowl with a jaw in bandage, coming onto the field, bowling, getting the wicket of Brian Lara, and then flying home the next day. And the way I got to know of it was even crazier because as soon as the injury happened, I was sent off to interview Andrew Lepus, the physio. I did an interview with him. It was not live. It was a taped interview. He said very simple, this is what happened. He's got hit. This is the kind of injury. He described it in technical terms. He will be taking no further part in this test match and flying home tomorrow. I said, thank you, Andrew. I came back to my producer. I said, guys, got the scoop, got the interview. Let's play it out. And my producer takes the tape and he chucks it aside. I'm like, I've just gone and done the interview for you. I have got the latest from the Indian dressing room. He said, just look out there. I turned around and I see Anil Kumble on the field with his jaw strapped. I see, so dhoka ho gaya? Andrew has just told me that he's doing no further part in this match. I've come back with an interview and nearly lost my job that day because Anil Kumble decides to come onto the field and my information was rendered useless. I told him that. We did a full session on this, on Kumble's various achievements. And first thing I told him, I said, Anil, you nearly made me lose my job. And he regales his own story so beautifully about how he came onto the field. And the first thing that David Shepherd, the umpire, told him is, listen, I'm a little worried for you. So Anil said, yes, I know it's hurting. He said, no, I'm not worried about you bowling. I know you can bowl. Just don't appeal.
Kumble, the tough man. Can't even imagine the amount of mental fortitude it would require to go and do something that incredible. And, again, it was not really much needed on his part. We, of course, were not really going to get a win there. But, just the man who you can't put down, he would keep coming back. He would keep coming back at you. And those 600 plus wickets are a testimony to his toughness. Great cricketer. Now
I add a test 100 in there as well.
Yeah, a test 100 at the Oval.
In a series when no other batsman got 100.
Oh, yes. So moving on, this is the final photograph and I'm now beginning to get a little greedy because, we have had too many stories and it's sad to say it's the final photograph on the list, but well, let's start.
Yeah, well, this one again, it comes back to, I think, the prettiest of them all. Yes, Newlands, spectacular with Table Mountain, Caribbean grounds with the beaches nearby. There's something about the Adelaide Oval as it used to be that, is goosebump stuff. I first saw a black and white picture which my dad brought back when he was there in the 70s twice. And then there I was, been told 3 days before the Adelaide Test match, after India had drawn at Brisbane, rain-affected test, Ganguly got 144. And I was told that, okay, great, you're making your commentary debut in Adelaide. I'm like, come again? So, yeah, you're making your commentary debut. I'd done a lot of things by that point in time. In 2.5 years I'd been. Fun stories, done all kinds of stuff, diving with sharks and bottles of beer in my hand. But suddenly to be told that commentary was on the cards was unreal. And when I walked into that commentary box area at the Adelaide Oval, there are two adjoining boxes, but one common room. So the common lounge area, and you walk into either the Channel 9 box or the ESPN Star box. And when I saw the kind of other people who were sitting around there, it was honestly unreal. I mean, there was Richie Beno, Bill Lawry, Ian Chappell, Craig Chappell, Jeff Boycott, Ravi Shastri, Sunil Gavaskar, and I mean, all these iconic, and Harsha, of course, was there, and Alan Wilkins.
Was it
and all these names were there. And it was completely intimidating. And here I was going to do the exact same job as all these people for a test match at the Adelaide Oval, India versus Australia. It was seriously intimidating. My first stint was at Sunny Gavaskar. To cut a long story short, the images do a lot of the Adelaide Oval. I mean, for me personally, a lot of people have loved the redevelopment of this ground, and people's most recent memory would be 2015 and those fabulous sunsets they saw. But to see those giant stands up there just doesn't do it for me. It's great to see redevelopment, but grounds like the MCG that have always been arenas can stay arenas. But to have this ground with a backdrop of a cathedral and grass banks and the chapel stands and the beautiful red brick Bradman stand suddenly turned into an arena it just wasn't the same Adelaide Oval. It's a different ground. It's a fabulous ground. It's great venue, lots of players. But the old Adelaide Oval is what did it for me. And at the end of the test match, the curator of the Bradman Museum, who I had interviewed before the test, heard about the fact that I was doing commentary for the first time with these guys. He came and gave me a limited edition watercolor of the Adelaide Oval, which had been hand signed by the Don. And it was a great gift to have, and great piece of memorabilia to have, to know that this was the occasion, this was the ground, and this was a truly picture-perfect setting to start off. And of course, let's not forget a certain Dravid-Lakshman partnership, not the one from 2001. That was a different kind of iconic partnership, but it was away against Australia, double 100 from Dravid, and India actually beating Australia in a test match. And I mean, I didn't write the script, I just did commentary. But if I could have written the script, that's the script I would have written.
How lucky you are to have that test as your debut, as your commentary debut. Were you the lucky charm for the Indian team? So many years of trying to win tests in Australia, this one coming right when you made your debut.
I'd love to think so, but it's almost like when we talk about commentators' curses, I think sometimes we take too much credit for ourselves, like we have any power of what's happening on the field. But in reality, it was just a good omen for me personally, that it was such a great setting, such a great place with such great company.
And such a great partnership.
Yeah, such a great partnership.
Seriously, whenever I think of Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman, one person that I also think of is Steve Waugh. I mean, this man witnessed their 376-run partnership that completely threw the Australians off their dream run of test wins. Again, 2 years later, he sees them take India from 85 for 4 to a famous test win with a 300 plus partnership once again. Must have had this feeling of not you again, not you guys again.
But also, since you brought up Steve Waugh, it was an iconic series also because it was his farewell series. And so on the sidelines of everything that was happening with, India winning in Adelaide was the fact that every test match, there was a bit of showmanship with farewell Steve, the fourth test match in Sydney, which of course remembered also for some great innings, not least of all from Sachin. But that red hanky of Steve Waugh was distributed round the ground. So yes, Steve Waugh also had different memories of that series.
So that brings us to the end of that list of 5 photographs. But one thing that we do at the end of this list is we ask our guest about a photo that got away, a photo that wasn't clicked, of a special moment that our guest has seen or would have liked to see. So let me ask you as well, which cricket moment whose photograph doesn't exist would you like to have seen, or one that you have seen, a pan out in front of you, but whose photograph we do not have? Which one would that be?
Well, interesting. I mean, I've actually thought about this a lot, and it's not even one that has sort of come to me in terms of what that moment could be. So as an aside, I'm going to throw in one moment that publicly no photographs exist, but I was privy to those moments. and another turning point in Indian cricket history. 83 might have been one, 2002 for certain reasons. On a test arena, 2003-4 at Adelaide certainly was. But let's not forget 2007 in Johannesburg, which also changed Indian cricket. There's no dearth of footage. There's no dearth of photographs of the moment, be it the catch from Srishant, etc., etc., etc. But the fact was that the Indian team themselves didn't realize what had hit them. And the slow process of that realization actually happened at 35,000 feet in the air. They won the tournament, they celebrated, and then that ticker tape parade was awaiting them in Mumbai, which is what, when the nation realized that no, it was not just some exhibition tournament that they had won. This was something that was going to change the face of world cricket forever. People might talk about ICL, people might talk about various things, but had India not won the World T20 on that particular day, I don't think the IPL would have been what it is today. And I don't think 2020 cricket, at least it may not have been what it would have been today, because India started taking it seriously. India led the way, and then something changed world over. And those moments that I witnessed up on that flight from Johannesburg to Dubai, I just happened to get on that flight because everyone else was booked on a different one. I saw those Indian players who really, from a Rohit Sharma to a Robin Uthappa to Srishant, even the captain sitting alone, 2 seats in front of where I was, he was like, of course we won another tournament, but how big actually is this? I had this conversation with him, and I took a photograph of him also holding a newspaper. I think it was Gulf News, Dubai paper, and reading it and slowly trying to come to terms with how big that achievement was. Same goes for Srishant. Same goes for the likes of Rohit, who was relatively new at that point in time. When they realized that, yes, I think it's something big we achieved. So, in a sense, there are no photographs, nothing to capture those moments. But those are the kind of moments where so much happens behind the scenes that is not for public consumption. But that's when you actually realize, or the world realizes, what has happened.
And they would also realize in a few hours when their plane lands in Mumbai and that ticker tape parade takes place, and it takes hours to move for that vehicle to move through Mumbai, because there is so much love, there is so much adulation flowing on the streets of Mumbai for those cricketers. So yeah, this is a very special moment, and I don't think we would have been able to know about it had it not been you telling us. So a big thank you for that, Gautam. Well, with this we come to this end of a very, very special episode. So many wonderful memories, so many wonderful stories. Can't thank you enough for sharing these amazing stories. And I think, we would need a season 2 to get all the stories out of you, because definitely there is no dearth of stories when it comes to you. And you totally won the quiz, by the way, scoring a string of +10 on every question. Congratulations.
Thank you. If only one day I can win a real Amit Sinha quiz, trust me, that I would consider an achievement, because there I would score fat zeros in most of the genuine googlies that you throw. But thank you so much for putting this together. It's been a good experience to actually, get the memory bank going and get the machines whirring to try and remember these incidents. And in a way, I'm glad I didn't have an actual answer to your last question, which I scored 0 on, which was to find a cricketing moment that wasn't photographed. Because I think that, to end with, I'd like to pay tribute to people in both the print and television fraternity, people who actually captured these moments, and some even in words, who have never let a cricketing moment go by. I think right from Bradman getting bowled for a duck in his last innings, to Victor Trumper that I saw in Joy's episode, to Charles Bannerman. I think everyone, some way or the other, almost every moment we can think of has been captured. So I missed out on that one, but it's for a good reason. And
absolutely, and that is exactly what this podcast wants to pay tribute to, because we talk about these cricketers, and every time, say, we talk about an Imran Khan, we have an image of his, holding that World Cup, and so many images of some great names, some great cricketers. And that is because those brilliant photographers took those images, but they often don't get talked about a lot. This podcast is about talking about their photographs, giving significance to their work, which sort of, gets unnoticed. And that is majorly the endeavor. I hope you like it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Before we go, here is a question for you to attempt. Gautam Bhimani talked about his love for the Adelaide cricket ground, right? Now you have to tell me what is written on the Adelaide cricket ground scorecard in the place of extras. There is a specific word that is seen on the scorecard, which makes it a rather rare scorecard in the world of cricket. So you have to tell me what word can be seen in place of extras on the scoreboard, big scoreboard of the Adelaide cricket ground. With that, we come to the end of this episode. We'll be back again with another special guest in our next episode. Till then, stay happy, love cricket.